All right, welcome everybody to Buildup lecture number 2. Welcome everybody. Aaron, wave hi. And we've got a special guest today, Rob, wave hi. And you'll hear from Rob a little later. So we're going to be here for about 90 minutes. And you're going to hear from me first for about 30 minutes. And Aaron will speak for about 30 minutes. And then Rob has some fantastic stuff to talk to us about modular construction for homes and other buildings. A lot of people are heading in that direction towards modular construction, and there's some advantages to that, and I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about it. And I'm going to let you, Aaron, later on introduce Rob. Okay?
Yep.
You guys all remember, if you have any questions at any time for me or Rob or Aaron, just put them in the chat box, and I'll try and keep my eye on it. And I'm sure Aaron and Rob will help me out if I miss something. But again, welcome everybody. Okay, I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're just going to get going here as quickly as we can. So we named this course Buildup: How to Grow an Unbeatable Sustainable Real Estate Portfolio. From idea, business model, purchase, financing, leasing, to scheduling, budgeting, renovation, and construction. But the orientation, the main focus of the course, as everybody knows, is in fact, how do you bring projects in on time and on budget, right? And with as few deficiencies as possible. And it's an area where I am not as strong as I should be, even though I've been in the industry for a very long time. And Aaron is much stronger in this area than I am, and I suspect Rob is too. You all should have had this list of homework from me. And after I finish giving my part of this lecture, I'm going to put the homework that I would like you guys to do in the chat box again, just to remind you to take the quiz, the ECQ quiz. It kind of measures your entrepreneurial ability. If you can't remember exactly how to do cap rates and ROI, there's a little bit of video training here. It's about 20 minutes of video training. If you want to know how to do internal rates of return, which are important for professional investors, I've got a video training on that as well, which you can watch. You should learn how to do critical path methodology. That is, how to lay out a schedule. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's a renovation or you're building the Taj Mahal. You do need to have some kind of schedule, all right? And this is a video training on that. Now, something I didn't put in for many of you, I didn't put in this, but I think you should read it. It's only 67 pages long. It's something I wrote called Business Model Illustrations. It'll give you a little bit more background in real estate investing, successful real estate investing. There are 10 cases in it. Like I said, it's only 67 pages long, so it's an average of 6 or 7 pages per case. 3 of them are businesses, which are kind of interesting, and 7 are real estate cases. And, you know, for those of you who worked with me before, you know that I think real estate business models can be more than just, you know, buy a house and rent it out, or buy a townhouse and rent it out. There's more to it than that. So that's pretty easy read, but I'd like you to do that. And then particularly relevant to this course is another small handbook, or shortish handbook I wrote, called Development Manager Role. So most people talk about project management. Development management is a much broader field, and I'd like you to read that as well. And you can just download these from Dropbox. So I'll put that again in the chat box. And for those of you who would like to get credit for this course, I want you to do an assignment. I mentioned this last week. You pick a project. Like I said, it could be new construction, it could be renovation. You pick a project, it could be big or small, it doesn't matter. And it can be real or imaginary, but hopefully it's a real project that you're working on. And it can be residential or commercial or recreational, industrial, institutional, I don't care. You figure out its highest and best use. You determine its functional program, that is, what uses the building or the project is going to be put to. You create a C-level budget, a construction budget. C-level just means it's not exactly to the penny. You develop its ROI, what kind of return on investment you might get. You do a critical path schedule. You figure out what kind of a team you need to pull this off. You're going to have to figure out how to finance it. And then, of course, whether it's a buy and hold, or you're going to build it and sell it, whatever. All right. And if you get at least a B- on your assignment, which would be in a PowerPoint that you submit to me at the end of this course, that would be June sometime, you'll actually get a grad certificate, right? So I'll put that in the chat box again. Today, what I'm going to do in my 20 or 25 minutes left is I'm going to talk about the elements of that assignment as it applied to a project where I worked as a development manager for Dr. Olander, who's a local veterinarian that I've worked for many, many years on projects that he has done. And one of the things that I'm sure many of you know is that there are all these new artificial intelligence things that are out there, including Chat GPT. And I put the URL here, chat.openai.com/chat. And it turns out that you can ask, if you can't figure out how to do a critical path schedule, you can ask the AI to do it for you. And it's a way to cheat, really, basically. So I actually asked the, I'll put this over here so I can see a little better. So I actually asked the AI, can you do a critical path schedule for me for a house? So I just gave it a simple assignment. And sure enough, it printed this out in about 30 seconds, obtain building permits, pour foundation, install framing and roofing, do the plumbing and electrical, install the HVAC and insulation, drywall and finish, flooring and cabinets, finish plumbing and electrical, paint, install fixtures, final inspection and cleanup. So it gave me a little schedule and how long it might take. I mean, that's pretty good. So you can actually put into the AI, you can actually put in what tasks you want. It would be more detailed than this, how long you think they're going to take. And you can also put in there the predecessors. That's very important in critical path scheduling. What do I mean by predecessors? And if there's anything that you don't understand, please don't hesitate to put it in. Okay. So what happens when you put the predecessor in? It's kind of very, very simple stuff. In other words, you wouldn't put the framing up for a house until you had the footing and foundation and backfill done, right? I mean, it's obvious. You would put the roof on until the framing is done, right? And you wouldn't do the rough-in for the plumbing and electrical, and you wouldn't put drywall in a house until the building is closed in. I mean, there's some very obvious things. So what you can do is you can say, here are the tasks. Here's how long I think they're going to take, and here are the predecessors. And then what you're going to get is you're going to get something called a Gantt chart, G-A-N-T-T, Gantt. And it's just named after Henry Gantt, who worked on this this methodology, critical path scheduling, back in World War II. And you're going to get, you'll have all of the tasks laid out, as you can see on this screen here. And usually what they do is they show you in red which ones are critical. Aaron, you know what a critical task is?
Yes.
What is it?
I use Microsoft Project, but it's stuff that has to be done in order for other things to move forward.
Right. And what it also means is that in critical tasks, there's no slack time. In other words, if that task is late by a day or a week or a month, your whole project will be delayed by a day, a week, or a month. So it's critical. There are other tasks that maybe you have some slack time, which means if it's delayed by a week, it won't really necessarily affect the finish date of the project. So you really want to focus on which ones are critical. And that's what you get out of critical path scheduling. That's why it's called critical path, right? All right. And then I thought, can the AI actually show me a bar chart? So I asked the AI for a bar chart, and sure enough, they put it in the bar chart. And then I think, yes, I asked it, which ones are critical? And sure enough, the AI was able to identify task 2, excavate and pour foundation. Task 3, install framing and roofing, and drywall and finish work. And I think, Aaron, when you look at it, that actually kind of makes sense, right? Those are probably critical tasks in any home construction.
Yep.
So for those of you who are white collar workers like me, like I'm a coach and a realtor, I think the AI is eventually going to put us out of business. For people like Aaron, who works with plumbers and electricians and carpenters, I don't think the AI is going to jump out of the internet and go and fix your plumbing or nail shingles on the roof. So my youngest son, Matthew, who is a project manager, tells me that people, hey, Dad, you're going to be out of date. Maybe I already am, I don't know. But you're going to be out of a job because of the AI. But people who are in the trades are not. So there you go. So this is the project that I'm doing, and I'm going to show you what I did for Dr. Olander as the development manager. And what is the difference between a development manager and a project manager? Well, a development manager is there from the moment of ideation, when you're coming up with some ideas, to maybe buying the property, taking it through the planning process, getting a building permit, a site plan agreement, doing the budgeting, making sure the ROI is adequate, helping with the financing, helping with the construction, helping with the leasing, the shakedown crews of the building, make sure everything is working properly. So a development manager does much, much more than a project manager. A project manager really has to be there to make sure that, the roofer shows up when he or she, they are supposed to show up. They're very, very, very focused on the scheduling. The development manager does much, much more. Everybody sort of get that? So what I think you want to be is a bit more useful to your clients by being more than a project manager. And if you're doing the work for yourself, you want to understand what a development manager is. And that's why I asked you guys to read that thing that I wrote on what it's like to be a development manager. It's 25 pages, but you probably will benefit from. So this was a clinic that Dr. Olander wanted to build in Kanata, which is a West End suburb of Ottawa, quite a wealthy suburb. And it's a 5,400 square foot, single story slab on grade building. And we're going to walk through this project today. So this is the site that we picked out. I think I actually picked it out. And the doctor had two rental clinics. So he had two existing vet clinics, one here to the north and one here to the south. This site happened to be right in the middle. And what he wanted to do was he wanted to close those two rental clinics and own something himself, right? Because his youngest son, Robert, has entered into the profession as a vet. And the doctor told me, I don't want my son to be a rental serf, if you guys know what I'm getting at, right? We don't want Robert to pay rent for the rest of his career, as I've done for mine. So it had an existing house on it, which you can see here. And this is an aerial view of it. So at Major Road here, going to the north, this is an east-west artery, which actually turns into a north-south artery. And here is the site. Can you see, Rob, can you see my cursor moving around okay?
Yes.
So it has access over here to a residential street, and it has access over here to a commercial or major road, okay? It's about a 2-acre site, so it's quite big. And there's the existing house on it. This is Dr. Olander on site. Ottawa is the place where it's always winter, so it doesn't matter what photographs I show you, it's always friggin' cold in the city. So there's Dr. Olander, and he's standing on site. This is a picture I took with Nick Cripps, who's a real estate broker who works with Aaron and me. You recognize him, right, Aaron?
Actually, barely, but yes, now that you say it.
Okay, thanks. I won't tell Nick that. So here we are standing on site and trying to get a sense of it. And you have to walk a site in almost every case before you buy it. And so we're walking here, and I took this picture, and this is the major road, or one of the major roads, and you'll notice it had a farm gate. That's very important. It had a culvert here, so you can cross the ditch safely, and it had a farm gate, right? So I was hoping, if I go back a couple of slides, I was hoping that if we build the vet clinic here, that we would get access to the major road, not come in through a residential street. We don't want to disturb our neighbors, and it would be much better to get access here. And that was a really controversial thing. So anyway, I think that was a very important finding. And you can really only find this stuff by wandering and walking a site. And I think we have at least one architect or architectural technologist on the call here today. And you can see this was a sketch I did when we were actually walking around on the property. And you can see, I think it was snowing that day. Like I said, it's always winter in Ottawa. And so for the architects and architectural technologists on the call, you'll realize that we don't really need you. I'm fulfilling that role. So here's the sketch. This is the existing house. Here's the residential street. Here's the main road here and another main road here. Here's where the building would go. It'd come in here. There's the parking lot. And, sort of that was just me sketching it. I'm being facetious. Obviously, we do need an architect. And you can see here what P2 did. And this is Patrick Rutherford's company, P2. very good architectural technologists, and I think they work with Dustin Poole and vice versa. And Aaron, you know Dustin as well. So this is obviously, I was being facetious. You absolutely do need an architect, because these site plans are very, very detailed. So here's where the new clinic is going to go. And you can see where the parking is, how the pedestrian movement is, where the garbage is going, where the shed is going for, storing outdoor equipment. This is where the house is, how the ingress and egress works. You've got topography to deal with, stormwater to deal with, well and septic, because it's in the rural area. It is very complicated. All right. So we definitely need that. Now, here's some of the things that have happened while we're doing this project. The original house that I showed you burned down to the ground. And you want to know how embarrassing it is? I helped Dr. Olander, Nick and I helped Dr. Olander as real estate brokers buy this property. Then we found a tenant for him, and the tenant burned his house down. It's amazing that he still works with me. But anyway, he didn't fire me, thank goodness, but his house burned to the ground. So between insurance and other things, built a nice new executive home on the property. Here are just some more elevations, and it'll be a really fantastic clinic. And you notice how much effort has gone into the elevations. It's very, very important in today's world to have a good brand. When I was a young engineer, I thought brands were for the beans. Like I didn't care. I mean, whether wear Calvin Klein jeans or jeans that are no name, I don't care. But I realized that a lot of people do care. And so for the doctor, he has 15,000 clients. Branding is very important. So the building has to reflect the quality of the work that he does. As a young engineer, I didn't really understand that, but I do now. Now I lost some design battles. Okay, so as a development manager, and I'm very bossy. Ask my wife. There's some of these design arguments I lost. I really hate office buildings that are 20 stories high. You can't open a window. You freeze on the outside of the building, and you boil on the outside of the building. You freeze. They never get the temperature gradient right. You got fluorescent lighting, which I think is terrible. You can't have a nap. There's no place to put your head down if you want to just take a break for 15 minutes. They've got elevators, and there's long commute times. I just don't like it. So I wanted to put windows into the clinic that open, and the HVAC guys, the heating, ventilation, the air conditioning guys, and the architects all said, no, can't do that. We need to control everything. I didn't get that. I didn't win. So I suggested clerestory. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. Clerestory windows, which are windows you can see up high that open. All right. And I might be able to get some of those, because I think it's really important for the staff and for clients and for the vets themselves to have, and not to mention the pets, to have fresh air. That's just my bias. And of course, the pandemic reinforced that, but I've been thinking this for a long time. Okay, what are people saying in this? Thanks, James. You get that I don't like the winter very much, correct? I spent 2 months in Mexico during the winter, and then I got back and it was still friggin' winter here. And so I did win some battles. I think it's very important to use site signage. I don't care whether, and by the way, Rob, I know you're building an 8-plex. You mentioned that to me in Hintonburg. Mm-hmm. Give your building a name. Instead of being, 139 any street, Ontario, I have a building that I'm renovating in downtown, which I call the Burroughs building. Burroughs is a nice name because little animals go there for safety. And so rather than saying I live at 1234 any street, you say I live in the Burroughs building. It's the cheapest thing you can do, but it gives it a little bit of panache. So give this building a name, doctor, and make sure that you're on your outside signage has lighting of some sort. And you can sort of see here that we cleared out a site triangle. So there's the major road, if you can see my cursor moving up and down here and left to right here. And this is the main intersection. So we did clear the trees in this area, so the sign will be visible and it will be lit. Because not only is winter, Ottawa winter for all but 3 days a year, it is also dark for a great portion of the year. So I won that battle. I'm not going to go through the details of the interior design. but here's the interior design. And we hired a specialist. So we have an architect and an architectural technologist working on the site plan and the overall look and feel of the building. But for the interior, we actually hired a specialist. I think they're called artistry, like artistry, it's kind of cute, to design the interior of the clinic, because what vets need is different from, say, an office user. And I've worked on some of these, but I've also worked on dental offices. And again, there are specialists who do interiors for dentist offices. Very important to get people who really actually know what they're doing, so you get a good product at the end of the day. What you don't want to do is you don't want to build it twice. And in terms of functional program, it's a very simple thing I want you guys to do. You list all the uses you want to put your aplex to, or your vet clinic or whatever it is, on the left-hand side of the spreadsheet, and then how many square feet or how many square meters it's going to occupy, and some other details. All right. And it all starts just with a sketchbook. And you can see when we were walking around with Dr. Olander and artistry and the architect, we started to come up with what are the uses and where do they go and how do they interrelate. Again, I could spend an hour and a half just doing this, and I don't have that much time, so I'm not going to go into the details of it, but I want you to sort of understand it's a bit of an art. So I don't think the AI is actually going to replace everything that we do, at least not in the foreseeable future. And here's one I did for a different project. This was a major community facility, which had a gymnastics club at its center, and then it had a number of other sports involved, restaurants, health food stores, yoga studios. I mean, you can see all the uses are on the left-hand side here. And then you see how many square feet. We did it in square feet, imperial instead of metric, but could be metric. How many square feet each use takes, and then some comments. How much ceiling height do we need? For example, for a gymnastics club, you need 35-foot ceiling heights. I mean, I didn't know that, but you learn that when you do these kinds of projects, because they tell you, hey, we do some trampoline work, and those guys go up into the, they're like Elon Musk's, what do they call it, star something, right? A Starship, which actually exploded today. So hopefully it's not like that. But then you have a basketball club where you need 20-foot ceiling heights, an obstacle course, 30-foot ceiling height. So we have to know this kind of stuff, right? So your functional program is very, very important. And from that, you start to develop your task list. What are all the things we have to do? And so this is now going back to the doctor's project. Appointed development manager, happened to be me. A planner, Paul Robinson. Then we did a pre-consultation with the city. That means the city brings all of their professionals, their transportation people, their servicing people, all these, their environmentalists. Everybody comes. That's cost $500. The best $500 you ever spend. Consult with your local counselor, which we did. Hire an architectural technologist or an architect, which we did. Patrick Rutherford. We needed a traffic engineer, David Halpenny. General contractor was Tim Streak, very good contractor. A surveyor, John Guthrie. Hydro, geo, and soils. You got to know what the bearing capacity of your soils is. Gemtech worked on that. And we needed an environmental impact statement and a tree conservation plan. What the heck? Bernie Muncaster did that. Then we had a team meeting. Then there were more. We had to do that sea-level budget. Then we needed to hire a civil engineer for site servicing. We need a grade control and drainage plan, because one of the things you don't want to do, doesn't matter whether you're building an aplex like Rob is or a vet clinic, you can't flood your neighbor's property with stormwater. You got to figure out how to deal with it. You might need a slope stability test if you have a slope on the site. You've got to look at all your servicing options, your traffic impact statement, erosion and sediment control. I mean, these are a lot of studies. Stormwater management, hydrogeological and terrain analysis, roadway modification, because there might be some modifications to the road so that you can get access. You have to prepare a planning rationale. Are you guys tired yet? We're only halfway through the task list. You got to do a public consultation. You got to prepare a site plan. You got to have a landscape plan. You have to have elevation and drawings, working drawings. You have to make sure you have a phase 1 environmental impacts, a phase 1 environmental site assessment, a tree conservation report, a site plan submission. I guess I'm repeating myself here. There was a minor variance application we needed to do, and then we had to make sure that we got our site plan approved. And then when you get through all of that, you finally at the point where you get your trades and subtrades to price things and to do shop drawings. Shop drawings are different from architectural plans, right? If you have any metal in the building, a stairway or something like that, there's a shop drawing for it. I mean, so you got a lot of work to do. Then you want to try and get a gross maximum price or a guaranteed maximum price out of your contractor so you don't blow your budget. And then you do your final budget preparation and review. You got to do some construction financing. Then you got to get your building permit. Then you got to actually build the sucker. Then you got to do the interiors. You got to budget for the interiors. You got to get your occupancy permit because you're not allowed to occupy a building until you actually have an occupancy permit. You got to cure any deficiencies. You got to make sure the landscaping is done. And then you need to usually refinance and take out your construction loan. Construction loans can be quite expensive, 8, 10, 12%. And hopefully your mortgage will be today 5 or 6% instead of 10%. All right. And then you celebrate. So I did a critical path schedule, and I had Microsoft Project as well, Aaron. But then Microsoft made it a license agreement, and it was going to cost me like $100 a month. I said to hell with that. So I downloaded some free software called Project Lead, and I put all these tasks in here, estimated durations, et cetera, and predecessors. And then I did the critical path schedule. So you can see it here. So the project started in April 2021. And I just went right to the end. And it was supposed to be, the project was supposed to be complete September of this year. But then something went wrong. All right. Something went really wrong. I put Tim Mark's name on here because he is the senior legal counsel for the city of Ottawa. And, knowing some people after 40 years in this business can help you sometimes. And Tim and I actually worked together on the Palladium Ontario Municipal Board hearing when we had to get approval of the Canadian Tire Center, the arena that we built some 25 years ago. So I know Tim, I've known Tim for 30 years, and he is now the top legal mind in the city of Ottawa. But let me tell you what went wrong. I'm going to stop sharing the screen because it's just too complicated to read it out to you. So, and I got to keep my eye on the ball here because I got like 1 minute left.
No
But I want to tell you what went wrong, just so you guys get a sense of everything that can go wrong. Help me out.
What wrong?
Everything
go wrong.
that can go wrong does go wrong. So we do a pre-consultation with the city of Ottawa, and they give us a list of all these studies. All those studies that I went through. I'm glad you didn't go to sleep on me, but I went when I was going through it. But they gave me that list at a pre-consultation. The doctor spent over $200,000 2 years doing all of those studies. In October of last year, the site plan was deemed complete. That's a big friggin' deal. That's a party when you get that done. So now we were expecting that the legal department would issue a site plan agreement. The doctor and I and his lawyer would review it. He would sign it. He would get his building permit, and we would be under construction. The province of Ontario, without telling anybody, decided to change the designation of the area where the doctor's land is. And they changed it from rural designation to urban designation. So all of the studies that we did are no longer valid. And they expected the city say, well, it's not our fault. The province unilaterally changed the boundaries of the city of Ottawa, expanded it. Now the doctor's property is in the urban area. You got to do it all over again. I can't tell you what I told them because I might have a few 4-letter words in there. Okay. But I basically said, no way, with an F in the middle of it, NFW, no friggin' way. He spent over $200,000, and I said, it's much worse than that. I said, the building of his main clinic is going to be demolished.
Oh.
You are going to put Dr. Olander and all his employees and his 15,000 clients on the street. because to do it all over again would cost another 200,000, maybe more, and another 2 years. And he doesn't have that. And I said, there's just no way. And I asked them, how many people in the city of Ottawa were affected by these unilateral changes from Mr. Ford, the premier? One, Dr. Olander. So I said, you guys know what the Magna Carta is? Does anybody on the call know what the Magna Carta is? Oh, Michael, you're smiling. You probably know what it is. So the Magna Carta was passed in, I think, 1200 and something. So, like 1,000 years ago. And what it meant was that the king couldn't just say, the law is me. You understand? So let's say that Mr. Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, our prime minister, decided to pass a law that it was now illegal to drink alcohol. And it was illegal to serve it, to sell it, or to drink it. But he made it retroactive for 2 years. Okay, I think probably everybody on this call might end up in jail. We'd have to build a lot of jails, right? That's what the province did. And I just jumped out of my skin, and I can get a little PO'd from time to time. Yeah, 1215. Thank you, Michael. So almost 1,000 years ago. Maybe it is 1,000 years ago. Anyway, a long time ago. So I said, there's no way the city of Ottawa is going to get a litigation in the many, many millions, and we're going to just, Dr. Olander is going to retire on this for sure. So I said, that's not going to work. Then they said, well, why don't you just apply for an official plan amendment? Well, how long will that take? Well, that'll take a year or two, and it'll cost the doctor about $100,000. So to revert back to the original designation, I said, no, not doing that either. Not spending $100,000, another $100,000, another year of this. I said, what's going to happen is you're going to do it. The city of Ottawa has the capacity to wave a magic wand and say, hocus pocus, your site is now back to what it was. So guess what they're doing? They're doing the hocus pocus thing, right? So there's a bunch more stuff that I have to go through, but I'm not going to go any further because I'll pick that up next week. But before I introduce Aaron, and then Aaron will do his thing and he introduces Rob, do you have any questions for me on what I've said so far about the doctor's clinic? Let's see what is in the chat box. What's that? Who?
I have a quick question, Sarah.
Okay, please, Sarah.
So did the city actually agree to do this? And out of their own pocket, you guys didn't have to pay, the doctor didn't have to pay.
He is going to pay one friggin' nickel, and they're going to do it by June 30th this year.
And did you have to involve any legal services?
Yep.
Like
I asked Tim Mark for his view, and he did not make his views known to me because he represents the city. He's not my lawyer, he's the city's lawyer. But you could be sure that he would have told the planning group, we are legally responsible, between the province and the city, will be legally responsible for it. It would probably be at least a $10 to $12 million judgment against the city. And they would have to pay it. So Tim is a smart man. He said, look, we could just do that. So what they're doing now, Sarah, is the counselor for the area, Councillor Clark Kelly, a young man, very, very, very solid guy. He is preparing a motion for council to pass, directing staff to do this and to do it by June 30th. But so I don't often get angry, especially at the age that I'm at now, Sarah. I don't often get angry, but I was some PO'd about this, and it's not my project, but when you work for clients like Doctor and you've known them for 20 or 30 years, or whether it's 2 or 3 months, you care about this sort of thing, and it's just not fair. Like I said, imagine if I passed a law that only applied to you, Sarah. Sarah has to pay 100% of her wages in taxes. Signed, Justin Trudeau. You'd be pretty pissed off too, and I'd be pissed off as your friend. All right, and I think Paula would be too. All right, so any other questions before we move on? And again, I could go on forever on this project, but we are going to resolve it, Sarah, and we're going to get this damn thing built before Dr. Olander's clinic is destroyed or demolished, right? And they're replacing with these huge buildings. All right, anything else? Let me see, we've got something from EJ. With the current OP just approved, what do you suggest smaller developers do for areas that might change in designation? Well, jump off a bridge for one. I currently have an R2 zone, would like to apply for an R4 for a 10 to 12 unit property. Wouldn't want to spend all that money for nothing. Well, you know, EJ, that's a good question. That's the last one I'll deal with. Unfortunately, our city planning has been, not just in Ottawa, but really across North America, and in fact around the world, has become the single biggest cause of the affordable housing crisis. It's very difficult to get a project approved. It's very difficult to get a project upzoned. It's not impossible, but it is very, very costly, and you have to be prepared for that. Many of you know Karina Guzman, and Karina, I think she calls herself, and I call her the land development queen. She's a bright, talented person, and she is prepared to spend big money upzoning, time and effort, EJ. And if you're going to do this, there is a tremendous need for that. And Michael's on the call here from BC. He does that sort of thing. So, you know, if you're willing to spend the time and the effort and the money to do it, it can be really worthwhile. In Karina's case, and I think to some extent Michael as well, they'll take it, a piece of property, they'll upzone it, which costs money and time, and then they'll flip it to a developer. Because many of the developers today don't want to do that sort of work. It's too itsy bitsy fiddly widdly. You run into the problems like I've run into with Dr. Olander. So they will pay, you know, 100% or 300% lifts on what, you know, so if Karina buys a property for $1 million, she might sell it for $3 or $4 million, right? But she will have done all the upzoning and all the work so that the developer has its de-risk. But there is a risk because the cities can turn you down. All right, so Aaron, are you ready?
Yes, will you share your, let me share my screen?
I will make you the co-host, and I will also make, I'm at the co-host business later when you share yours, ready to share your screen, Rob, you'll be ready to do that. So thank you all. I will continue part 2 of this story next week.
Okay, can you see everything okay?
Perfect.
How do I start this again? There we go. All right, I'll get through mine pretty quick because Rob will probably be a little bit more interesting than me, and Bruce tied up to some of the stuff I went through. I really want to look at how a project runs after a lot of the stuff that Bruce just described, getting to the point of, listen, we're here, we're ready to start building. What does our team look like? How do we build up that team? What kind of people are we looking to be? What is your involvement as the owner of the building? How far along do you want to be involved in this process? These are all my thoughts that I've kind of formulated over 25 plus years. A lot of these thoughts are unique, I think, to myself, because a lot of this comes from the position of commercial construction. And I really look at everything in the commercial lens because it's a bigger, brighter lens. And then I kind of bring it down to what the residential feel will be. So we'll get through a lot of this now. The big thing for me is really to look at the responsibility you as the owner of this project want to have. I put in capitals, what is your available time? We all overestimate how much time we have available to do these things, and it tends to lead to severe breakdowns on job sites. I have so many people that I've worked for over the years that want to do all this stuff, and we end up charging them more money because they cannot be there enough focus to move this along. The other note I put on there as the owner is, what are you bringing to this project? The other thing, and I'll be careful with how I say this, but a lot of owners bring a lot of opinions. Opinions cost money. So I always clarify and kind of chastise people to be very cognizant of what they want to do and what they can actually do, right? As you move that along is, do you want to become a general contractor? Do you want to be the top of the mountain, having all the responsibility, learning all of those information points that Bruce pointed out earlier in his slides? Or do you want to partner with someone like me, someone like Rob, partner with the GC? I have a lot of thoughts on how to share equity and some partnership models that we'll do in a separate time because it's a really, really important concept. And I think it's a great way as an owner that you can minimize some of your exposure and risk. And that'll be an entire coaching section. I'll probably spend about 30 minutes on that because it's kind of how I've built like my small little empire is working that way. And then really after, how do you hire your team? For me, I'm a relationship person. Anyone who knows me, my general rule of thumb is if I won't have a beer with you, I won't do business with you. I think it's overly simplified, but it really matters. You're going to spend a lot of time with these people and you have to get along. Otherwise, it's really a nightmare. The second point in there is really understanding the payment structure for the people you're hiring and the subcontractors that either they're hiring or you're hiring. Everyone has different terms. Everyone looks at this differently. You need a spreadsheet that kind of starts to detail when people are going to be asking for money, because it will really impact your construction draw and how much money you need up front. Just looking at the different kind of proposals, I just wanted to give you an idea. As a general contractor, people will bring me a set of plans and they'll ask like beginning pricing. Next week, we'll go through budgets, the different types of budgets that exist and the reasons we use the different types. But just to give you an idea, the average general contractor on a large 6 or an 8-plex like Rob's building, that represents somewhere in the range of 40 to 100 hours of time for me to read the plans, go through the small print, gather the sub trades, get all the pricing. There's a significant value to that. And it's the reason that general contractors will carry contingencies. They're covering off on a lot of their time that they spend on the front end that typically is not paid for. I've seen 15%. Lately, I've seen contingencies going into the 20 to 25%, and that's a result of what happened during COVID. Materials were a disaster, and a lot of my friends and colleagues got burned pretty severely. What you'll see now too is a lot of language where pricing will be good for a select period of time, and it's to cover off on that kind of mess that happened during COVID. One of the things that I've kind of been experimenting with as a general contractor is menu pricing. Almost everyone that I'll meet in this industry, and it probably includes everyone on this call, has friends, and that friend is my buddy's an electrician. I know a guy who owns a plumbing company. So in some cases, they may want to have some involvement because they think that can keep the price cheaper for them. I would say as a general rule, it never does. Working with friends and family is typically a disaster. And I would really caution you to not do it. Everyone needs to make a buck. And a lot of times when those bills come in, it kind of can impact some friendships and some family dynamics. I've seen it happen. Go ahead, Bruce.
So just to add to that, you know, there's still 2 chairs in heaven waiting for the first 2 partners to get there and like each other. And so I completely agree with Aaron. Working with friends and family can be very difficult, but working with any partner is not easy. And one of the things that can help your partnership is a model I call the non-partnership partnership model. So let's say Rob and I were to build 4 duplexes together. At some point, Rob and I should sit down and separate out. All right. So maybe he owns 50% of 4 and I own 50% of 4. But at some point we should say, look, Rob, you keep these 2 and I'll keep these 2. Are you good with that? Because you have agendas that will diverge, goals that will diverge. Maybe Rob is going to run off to Costa Rica and retire, and he sells his, and I don't want to sell mine. Right. So it's very important whether you're doing a partnership with a friend or a relative or just somebody you know well, to have some objectives when you go into this. And the other thing that I think really helps Aaron is, let's say, again, going back to the Rob and Bruce show, Rob and I now own 4 duplexes together. And he says, Bruce, you know something about property management. Why don't you manage these properties? And I say, sure. And then I say, well, I want 6% of the revenues in order to manage. And Rob says, what the heck? Why would I pay you 6%? Because if you don't, Rob, what will happen is I will lose interest in those properties. I will, because people are motivated by money. All of us are. So when you do partnerships, make sure that if Rob is doing all the planning work, he gets paid for that. If Rob is doing the leasing, he gets paid for that. If I'm doing the property management, I get paid for that, right? If Aaron is a partner as well and he's doing the construction management, he's not doing that for free, because if you had to hire a realtor to lease it, and you had to hire a property management company to manage it, and you had to hire a general contractor to build it, you would pay for that. So pay everybody fairly, and you'll have better partnerships, okay?
And just going further, that like the time and material model It's really the model that I've gone down, and I do that because I do end up with a slice of the pie on almost everything I do now, and it allows me to bring my pricing down. Everyone asked about that $200 a square foot.
Yeah.
These are the ways I'm able to do it. And we will have an entire section on partnerships because it's bigger than just a little 3-minute blurb, because it really will change the way you develop. So really, again, back to this, the general contractor, right? It's that idea of handing over control of your project, making sure there's a great understanding of the interactions and how you interact with that GC. I put in there communication, communication, communication. Nothing else matters. That relationship is husband, wife, wife, husband. It really has to start on the right footing, and it has to end on the right footing, because there will be a lot of hiccups that come along the way. I always ask people to figure out how many other projects they're running concurrently, how big their team is, and if you can go and see one of their projects. It's a really important thing. Guys that are running 5 or 6 projects, you're going to be sloughed down to someone underneath them, maybe someone underneath them, and you have to understand that that's what's coming. And if that works for you, that's great, but it's something to seriously consider. If you own the project and you want to be a project manager, you want to hire someone, you have more control over your build, then now you're going to be working more hand in hand. And that person is going to call you on a very frequent basis, because all of the big questions and all the big problems are coming your way, and you have to have the time and the availability to take care of that. And that's all the stuff: permits, severancing, the plumbing not being correct, the roof leaking, whatever it happens to be, it's coming your way. The understanding of the rates, the money, you'll see this will be a recurring theme. Understanding of how the money flows back and forth will be super critical. The last thing you can do is say, the heck with it, I'll run the whole thing. At that point, I would really recommend you hire yourself a little site supervisor, someone that can be on site 24/7, that kind of it's their job to put up fences and talk to people and make sure they access the toilets and take care of stuff like that. Most people like me hire site supervisors anyway. Okay, money. I'm a general contractor. I'm gonna say this like 100 times. You get a bill, pay that bill as fast as you can. If you want great service from people like me and other subcontractors, I pay attention when I send out the bill and I get an email the next day or that evening saying your bill is sorted. I also pay attention if someone sends me an email saying your bill will be paid in 3 days, give me a minute. That communication piece from the time I send the bill, what I hate is radio silence. I send you the bill and never hear from you again. That's not right. If you want great service, pay your bills. You will end up with amazing rapports and much better service downstream. Honesty. If you can't pay, if something's going on, be super upfront. Let people know all along the way what's happening. I put in here on meeting schedules. I can't tell you how much I hate when people are late or they set schedules and they don't show up. That part is a little upsetting. Please use email. Do not use text. I hate text messages for important documentation. That email chain will save your bacon 10 times out of 10. And that includes suppliers, subcontractors, the whole kit and caboodle. Don't use your texting. Make sure you have one key contact. Make sure there's one point of command, centralized command to run the project. It doesn't matter if it's a PM or a site supervisor or yourself, but establish the captain of the ship. Do not have a bunch of lieutenants. It will not work. I put in here a big one is respect. I go on a job site and someone starts yelling at me, even if it's the owner, I'll walk off the job site. I don't need the hassle. Most of the industry today does not need it either. Make sure you respect your subcontractors and your general contractors. Time is money. That's all we really care about in this industry. You say you're going to be somewhere, make sure you're there. If you're going to do site visits, please show up with a hard hat and steel toe boots. There's nothing worse than people that want to come to our site in flip flops. It actually gives me anxiety, makes me crazy. And I really put on here, it's a big one. Schedule your visits. Be respectful of the fact that things might be happening. Health and safety. We'll do this as a second unit because I think I'm running a bit tight on time. But I would really recommend that you reach out to your general contractors and your subcontractors. Ask to see their company policy. If they do not have one, seriously consider going somewhere else. Take a look at the policy. My health and safety policy is like 85 pages long. It's robust. It covers everything that can happen on a site, including when something doesn't go well. Make sure your subs are signing off on your policy. You ultimately are the owner of the building. You want them to sign off on your policy as well. Your policy will also dictate your liability as an owner. This is a really important component. Something happens on your site, it can come back on you personally. Make sure all the subs and everyone working underneath you has WSIB certificates. They're good for 90 days. They can automatically be sent to you, super easy. Stop in and check on some of these places. Take a look at the sites they're working on. Take a look, is it clean? What are they doing with garbage? Are they recycling? Is there correct safety railings? And what kind of signage is up? There has to be, it's provincially mandated, there needs to be a job safety board. It's very specific what goes on to it. So if you show up and there's a piece of plywood saying, welcome to the site, they're not adhering to the act. And I would probably come up with some version of a security plan for your sites. That's cameras and signage, stuff like that. This is a version of the form that I use. It's very simple. I send it out at the time of approved POs. I send it to all my subs. They're not allowed on my site until this is signed. It can't get any easier than this. I keep a hard copy on the site and I keep the copy in my shared drive. I put CYA, you know what it stands for. This is really important stuff. This one day could keep you from serious litigation or potentially jail. O&M manuals, operation and maintenance manuals is kind of a commercial concept. I've been using it ever since I came from the commercial model. When I finish projects and even halfway through, I provide all the ownership with a huge report, and my models are about 100 pages long. I include all the subs used and their contact information in the event that the owner ever wants to go back to them. I put all the material where I got it from, the colors. If it's a certain type of paint, I tell them what the sheen was on the walls, the colors on the sheens. All of the equipment, make sure you include in your manuals and you're seeing them, model and serial number. You also need to request and have startup reports on everything that was started up. Gas, anything gas fired has to have a startup report. Anything with refrigeration, so ACs, has to have a startup report. HRVs have to have a startup report and a balancing report. If they're not getting them, more than likely they were not started up correctly and they will fail. Hard stop. I also include a proposed maintenance schedule, just so as an owner, it's like, don't forget, quarterly, you want to change your filters. Really simple stuff. All of the pertinent information that's coming from your city and your city inspectors, even failed inspections, should be included because you need to see the history of what has happened during this build. And then the company warranty information would be at that point, my warranty information or whoever your GC happens to be. What are they providing you? Is it tailgate? Is it other things? That is a really important thing to be in this manual. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with as-builds. I know Rob and Bruce, you probably are. Maybe I know Michael is as well. But an as-build takes the set of construction drawings that you've had the entire time, and it's a marked up set of construction drawings. So you actually see what it was designed to look like and what it was actually built as. So in most cases, you're going to see electrical runs, plumbing runs. You might even see some walls that were changed, but those as-builds ensure that as you move forward, you know exactly what your building looks like currently, the way it is built. It will be a great reference point to go back to your designers and architecturalists to say, these are the changes we made. Let's modify the next set of plans. And a big piece of this is when things have to be done. If there's a leak in a ceiling, without as-builds, you will not know where the plumbing is. With it, I can tell you, I can almost pinpoint to the actual inch where to cut my hole. This is really important stuff. Request it on all your jobs. I'll show you a model of it, but it's always done in red ink. So it's a very simple thing to see.
So I completely agree with that. I can't tell you the number of tenants I've worked with, both in commercial and in other aspects of our business, that go on architectural plans. They design their whole office or their whole store, or whatever it is that they're fitting up. And they don't do site measurements and they don't have as-built. So then they go to actually build out, you know, their fit up, and nothing fits.
Yeah, and you'll get a lot of guys won't do it because they're just lazy. So it's something you have to stay on top of them for, and just say, just take 10 minutes, draw it the way it is.
Right on.
This is a simple example. You see on the right-hand side, that's the way it was designed. On the left-hand side, you see all the notes.
Wow.
It doesn't have to be as detailed as this, but everything will matter. It may not matter today, but it will matter at some point in the owner of this building.
That's a really powerful graphic, Aaron.
Yeah, and it's all red pen, really easy to figure out. The real and I'm getting near the end of this. So one of the things that I do, neighbors mess you up more than almost anyone else when you're building these units. I always stop in personally. You know, I own a brewery. I stop in with beer and a gift certificate. And I stop in and just let them know what's coming down the pipeline. I let them know that it'll be intrusive. I apologize in advance. And I always give them my contact information. Because if they can't get hold of you, guess who they're going to call? They're calling bylaw, and they're going to get your project shut down for a bit. And if they really don't like you, they'll just keep calling bylaw before the city steps in, and then you have serious problems. I get in front of it as much as possible. I will often offer to do different things, you know, adjust a fence, move some simple excavation when I'm there. Your neighbors, like, you need good neighbors for at least 6 months to a year. Start in the right way. For like the price of a 2.4, it's not even worth thinking about. That also applies as you move down the line to parking and deliveries, depending where you're building. Downtown, the centralized core is very hard to work in. You will need people to be very understanding, get in front of that, talk to them, let them know stuff's coming, let them know in advance, because you'll have their contact information too. Be polite, send them a text or an email. By the way, we're having a large delivery coming. It'll be in front of your building for a day or an hour. Is that okay? Plan out for site trailers. You need space for people to work. You need somewhere to be plans. Toilets, you know about that. That's easy. Make sure when your job is approved and you have your stamp drawings from your city, go to your local printing store and get 100 copies of the plans. It amazes me how many times subcontractors show up and they have no idea what they're doing because they don't have the right size printer, or they show up with an 8.5 by 11 set of plans trying to figure out what to do next. Have a ton of copies. One thing you must have is you have a master plan. It should be labeled all over it. Never, ever give away your master plan, because that's the one that you're marking up yourself as an owner or a GC. Contact lists should be available on every site. Inside your site office should have all your subcontractors, should have all your suppliers. So when someone needs to know how to get hold of someone, they just go to the list. Super easy. Storage, double the amount you think you'll need, triple it. You'll always need more storage than you have. I put in here, the planning of your next project starts during your current projects. Figure out the sub trades that you like, the respect, they have good people working for them. Look at the different designs that you realize caused you some hassles or have improved your project. That's a communication piece. Look at all your leftover materials. I took leftover materials on a couple of my jobs, and I usually build sheds with them. I never throw anything away. I keep care of it, and it's a reuse, recycle piece for me. I buy everything in bulk. I have a lot of storage. Your discount model is really attractive if you can buy a pallet of wire. I'm serious. You're going to save like 15% on a roll. Clean fill, recognize that getting rid of an excavation, there's a lot of people that'll just come take it. The rules are changing a bit now, but it still exists. The next one is kind of a weird one for me. One thing I hate is when an owner shows up and says, hey, listen, I need a price. I have 17 other buildings coming down the pipeline. I don't respect that, because I think they're probably lying to me. What I do respect is what Bruce does. If I saw a presentation with different sets of plans, different addresses, that makes that communication a real point, and that gets me excited. So if you're going to approach people about multiple opportunities, make sure there's some details to go with that. Make sure there's some meat on those bones. When you get into the rental market, this is a great way to save some money. You can look at multiple term rentals where you can transfer units from one to the other. Rental companies, especially small town rental companies, will give you a lot of breaks because their business depends on these ongoing relationships. And I only rent from small town places because usually their delivery is like $50. They run their business very uniquely. Construction financing, I think I'm running short on time, so we'll jump past this, but this will be a section. Next week, we're going to have David Warren on. He owns his own independent MIC. He also owns referral mortgages here in Ottawa. He's a friend. He does almost all of our financing. You'll find that he will probably cover this in detail. He's going to do some CMHC stuff. So I'll leave this for him because he'll be better at it than I am. And then the last thing to really think about with projects is the chicken and the egg dilemma is as how soon you can order materials. Bruce went into the Gantt chart model. There are some other things to really consider, and it's usually fiscal. It's you're having to prepay for a lot of things before you can finance them. So managed ordering, and I have some charts and stuff that I'll share with you. I use a lot of spreadsheets, but I'll share how I do it because it'll really make a big difference on your total pricing at the end of your job. And I put 15% contingency. As much as you can put in there, the more the better. And now I will hand it over to Rob. And full disclosure, I've known Rob now about a year and a half. His lead designer, Chris, approached me about my tiny homes, and we had a few discussions. And I've been kind of, I don't know, would you say I've been consulting, I guess, Rob? That's kind of my role's been lately. So we've been kind of talking this model through for a year, and what they're doing is really exciting stuff. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, mister.
All right, thank you. All right, so I'll just pull up my so maybe I'll just ask Bruce and Aaron, can you see the presentation?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Do you know how to share the screen?
Oh, well,
Have you,
I should-
your,
yeah, I should start with the,
just share
yeah,
the screen and we'll see it. I stopped Aaron, so start yours.
there you go. I thought Chat GPT would just
No, I'm not.
share the screen for me.
All right, that's perfect. Oh, that's a beautiful picture.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. All right, well, Aaron, thank you for the introduction, and obviously the opportunity. I'm honored to have it today to speak to a little bit about Modulink, of course, but also more generally some of the opportunities that are presented through modular construction, and I think some of the challenges that we've seen over the last decade, and sort of has been the genesis of what's led us to where we are today with Modulink. I'll get into a little bit more detail later in the presentation with an actual example. But first I want to start with just presenting the team to you, and I put team in air quotes because as Aaron said, he's been Aaron, I called you a special consultant or special advisor, not just a consultant, but I've been spending the last year talking to Aaron about this, trying to convince him to come on board more formally. Of course, Aaron and his, what do you have, Aaron? Maybe a dozen companies and multiple projects on the go is a very busy guy, and hopefully this is something that will pique his interest, and we can formally bring him on board and move forward together. But that would be the next press release coming out. Chris Yakotsi, who I think some of you may know, he is a planning and design veteran. You actually may have come across in either at a minor variance committee meeting, or maybe somewhere in the zoning space. He really is an expert in all things zoning, and also an innovator in terms of design and construction, and a really key part of what we're doing at Modulink.
Rob,
And then finally, yes.
Rob, can I add one thing about Chris?
Yes.
Chris is the one architectural technologist. When he does a plan, he needs to, at least for me, he needs to explain it to me sometimes 2 and 3 times, because he's just so brilliant, and he thinks in 3 dimensions. And I said to Rob before we started the class that, to me, Chris, it reminds me of Mr. Spock on Star Trek, who played chess in 3 dimensions. Don't ask me to play chess in 2 dimensions, let alone 3. But I can tell you that Chris was able to get, this is before Bill 23 in Ontario, before it legalized 3 units on an R1 zone. He was able to get a triplex, a 3-unit building approved in an R1 zone, even before Bill 23, and he did it legally. And he's just incredibly brilliant. He knows how to make small spaces work. He knows how to make them work in 3 dimensions. And I just can't say enough about his brilliance.
Yeah, thank you for that, Bruce. Agreed. So the last member of the leadership team on your screen, you'll see is Rocco Manfredi. Again, some of you may have come across Rocco in your real estate dealings. He is, well, I like to, call him the preeminent #1 infill real estate agent in Ottawa. I don't have the data to support that necessarily, but anecdotally, I know that he does a lot of business in the infill space and is obviously very well connected, and he leads our business development efforts at Modulink. So I'll talk a little bit, sort of more theory and a little bit more in general terms about modular construction and what we're trying to do at Modulink. I think the simplest way, or sort of what led us on this course, are the 3 underlying words. How can we build faster, better, cheaper? I mean, we all want to do that. That is our objective, of course. And so we'll take a little bit of a dive into each one of those. Sort of what are the things that prevent us from building faster? And as you can see on the screen, these are things that we deal with as builders every day. Complicated permitting process, availability of our building materials, coordinating multiple trades, availability of built trades, coordinating them all, and then sorry, lastly, the availability of material, which especially in the last couple of years has become a real point of contention or tension point in our build process. The scary part about all these things is that really they compound. They sort of build on one another. You're trying to acquire your trades, you're trying to acquire your material. You finally figure that out, and then you need to coordinate when your materials arrive, when your trade show up, and how just having sort of one glitch or one setback in that sequencing really compounds itself, and you end up losing not just 1 week, multiple weeks. Really speaks to, Bruce, what you talked about in terms of critical path. And a lot of times your ability to coordinate and manage these trades and supply issues results in pretty substantial delays. So the second area is, why can't we build better? What is stopping us from building better when we set off to build our buildings? And one thing I heard you speak specifically to, Bruce, earlier was about highest and best use. And just looping back to Chris, that really is, I think, one of his great strengths, and where I think most projects fail in terms of maximizing your land value is really going through the options, really understanding how to maximize the value of that land. And so I think what we've realized as part of Modulink, and obviously having Chris as that individual on our team, is that's where we start with our clients, making sure that you've done your highest and best use assessment and you're maximizing your land value. On-site design concessions, I think we talked a little bit about that as well earlier. And really that comes down to, a true design build, which we offer, versus, what I think Aaron showed so eloquently. There are going to be changes on site, and those need to be documented. But a lot of times those changes are made in very stressful conditions. And a lot of times they result in concessions. Okay, sure, just put a bulkhead there. That's not one that is, overly serious, but it's an example of just things that happen throughout the build process that result quite often in concessions. Exposure to the elements. Bruce, I think we all concluded you don't like the winter, but we're really dealing with climate pressures, whether that is actual winter construction, but even, clearly, rain and heat for that matter, building, it's funny, everybody was so happy that, I think it was last Thursday was going up to 28 degrees, and I had framers on my Grant Street project that were just complaining that it was too hot. So, there are exposure to elements that create impacts on your project, and it's not just cold and rain. And lastly, poor quality materials, workmanship, etc. So, when you have so many moving parts, it's so many different trades, not only the coordination of them, but ensuring that they are the best, the best trade to deliver the services and that are going to give you the quality that you expect in your project. And it's not easy. I think Aaron said something really interesting. The project you're working on now sort of sets the stage for your next project. And one element that I would say a lot of that is really, do you want to work with a particular subcontractor again? And a lot of times when you make those decisions not to work with them, you're experiencing the quality issues, the workmanship issues in your project, and now you have to deal with those in real time, and they're quite difficult to deal with. So why don't we build cheaper? Well, time. Time is money. I think we all know that. And what happens is you get these compounding situations, and you turn back and a month's gone by and your schedule is already behind a month. And that obviously, when we talk about the entire development process, I think we have to factor in the front end, right? Especially when we're looking for zoning changes that require site plan control, other minor variance processes. Those just increase your time to get to permit, which obviously, you're financing the land costs at that point. And so anything we can do to reduce the overall development time is going to result in savings from a construction point of view. Waste and efficiency. I'm experiencing this now. Framers saying, we need 2x4x10s, and we need them on site, and calling my supplier and saying, okay, well, I'll send you a pallet, and then the pallet ends up getting half used, and send everybody on site saying, oh, don't worry, we're going to use the rest, for back framing and for doing. And these things are just very ad hoc. You've got a lot of waste that you end up throwing away or recycling or offloading or storing, in Aaron's case, much more product than you ever intended to. So there is a lot of waste and inefficiency in the traditional construction process. Change in scope of work, things are changing on the fly. Sure, you decided that they needed to change. It's a good decision for them to change. Well, that change is going to result in scope creep, which is going to result in a PO, a new PO, and basically a new invoice for you to pay. Lack of buying power. This is another one. As you obviously, for example, someone like Aaron, who's built a number of places himself, GC'd a number of places. He's got a lot of great connects that result in savings on the buying side. But as a first-time, second-time builder, these aren't things that you're able to take advantage of. So what ends up happening is you end up paying at the top of the market price for most of your supplies. So all of that, I apologize if that felt like a lesson in some of the challenges and that we see in building, but it leads up to, okay, how can Modulink address these? What have we done to address these challenges? Because I guarantee you everything that I presented in the previous 3 slides, I've experienced personally. I think Aaron probably has, Bruce, you have. So we know that these are challenges that just run across the construction industry or the development industry. So how do we address them? Well, first of all, we offer a complete portfolio of building designs ready to go, along with the zoning expertise, so that you get your permits quicker. So included in the Modulink offer is the highest and best use, is the development of the architectural, structural drawings, etc., is the management of all of the various engineering reports required to fulfill your permit application requirements. So all of that, because the plans are done, pre-designed, gets you to permit much quicker. And I mean, it's not on this slide, but I guess it's implicit in the fact that he's a partner, having access to Chris during this first stage, from basically land acquisition right up to permit application, is a benefit that is going to result in significant time saving, because he is part of the project. So 2, this one has been sort of the main tenet of modular benefits for the last decade, for as long as modular construction has been in the conversation, and that is that you're building indoor in controlled space. Obviously, significantly less exposure to the elements for both those building and obviously the building material. So this reduces your build time, also reduces waste, and that's because you've got a an internal system for creating your modular components that has been established, so that you can be much more efficient in the ordering of your products. So all this leads to lower costs. The integration of construction management services. So Aaron talked about this. So part of the project is offering the construction management services as part of the end-to-end service offering. And so here we're talking about a single point of contact that manages, all the project schedule, logistics, etc. And finally, having a certified list of material suppliers and contractors. And this is, through years and years of sort of weeding through and determining, who is providing us the best value in terms of both materials and services, so that we can guarantee the workmanship and we can guarantee the quality of the products. So all of this stuff is things that we have experienced throughout our lifetime of building, and ensuring that we address those through the modulink offer. So I'm going to fast forward away from some of those higher level kind of opportunities and challenges that they're presented through modular building, and what we can do to maximize both the quality of the build and build it in the most the quickest and cheapest way, and really dive into something that we're currently working on that will make this, I hope, feel a little more real and give you a little bit of insight into how modulink works and what we have to offer the marketplace. So
Rob,
the project.
Rob,
Yep.
Dustin's an architectural technologist, has asked, has the city of Ottawa approved the modulink system?
Yeah, so it's a great question, because we talked about how we would do this. Effectively, we have a series of architectural drawings that do not necessarily distinguish between whether it's being built in a modular format or in a traditional stick build format. So based on that, what we've done is created a separate set. So clearly, and I will show you something. I will show you on one of the slides. The structural and architectural set are developed as if it could be built in either a modular or a traditional stick build approach. And then what we have is a corresponding set of shop drawings, which you talked about as well, Bruce, that really will be the blueprint, for example, for Aaron to build the panels and boxes that make up our modulink system. So there really isn't anything that is part of the system that would require a unique approval. It's all wood framed. It's the matter in which we deliver it, which really comes down to our proprietary shop drawings, because from an architectural and structural point of view, we can take the exact same set of plans and build it in a traditional way on site. Okay, so Bradford is a property in Britannia Village. It currently has a sixplex on it, or a series of buildings that equal up to 6 units, because it kind of was a hodgepodge of buildings put together that we are going to demolish and replace. And so the first.
Did you mean to go to the next slide?
I was going to go to it, but it might be too busy, and I thought it might be better to intro it on the previous slide. But okay, so what we did on Bradford, the first thing we did is we did our highest and best use assessment, and what you see here are the 5 categories of build types that modulink offers. So 3-story towns, multi-units, semi-detached, triplex, and coach home. And in our highest and best use, what we determined was we were going to maximize our land value by building a multi-unit. And in fact, we're going to build 2 multi-units, and that is because the land will fit 2 multi-unit buildings. So then we decided about unit type, unit count, and sort of, you know, unit types. What mix of unit sizes do we want in our apartment building? And I think one of the things that's clear is that under Bill 23, we could go up to 10 units without having you know, the requirements to do a site plan control. And so that is becoming, I think, a very you know, a very common number now that people are looking at in terms of multi-unit buildings. If you can get 10 units, you still stay below the site plan control threshold, and you maximize. You know, you have
And Rob,
addition.
just to reinforce that, you avoid the 2 years and $200,000+ that Dr. Olander had to spend and time just to get his site plan deemed complete, only to have the whole thing upended. But you really, I mean, time is money. Aaron must have said that 3 times. Time is money, and in this business, speed to deliver a project is crucial.
Absolutely, and you took the words right out of my right in my mouth. I actually, the note I had was a process that could set you back 18 months and $250,000. So I'm not that far off your experience.
Except you could double the time from 18 to 36.
Right, exactly. So here's a quick schematic just to give you a rough sense of the modulink approach. So what has happened in the modular industry is that you know, my personal opinion, and I think, you know, it definitely confirmed from a lot of the people I've spoken to and the things I've read, is that they haven't really been able to deliver on their 2 main promises, which was lower price and reduced timelines. And when you start to peel back the layers and figure out why that's happened, you see, I think one of the main reasons is effectively when you're building boxes, you need a lot of space to build those boxes. If you have a multi-unit apartment that's a 5,000 square foot building, you know, that's going to take 10,000 square feet of warehouse space in order to build those boxes. And how does a modular construction company scale when that's their business model? You know, if they have to build 50,000 square feet of, you know, of building, of new apartments, what are they requiring now on the warehouse space side? And what happens is all of that becomes a pressure on the builder, increases their overhead, thus increases the price passed on to the consumer. You know, so these were a lot of the challenges being faced. And I think the other thing is that when you look at your development time, a significant portion of that development time is pre-permit. And so you're kind of left on your own. And you're saying to yourself, I'm supposed to get this place built quicker, when in fact, you know, now I've effectively spent 18 months trying to get this permit through the city of Ottawa. So by combining that planning and design component with Modulink and looking at what we've developed as a hybrid approach. So a majority of our apartments are now built with panelized modular approach. And why panels? Well, panels are much easier to store. It won't take 10,000 square feet of warehouse space in order to build a 5,000 square foot apartment building. So exterior walls, floors and ceilings, interior walls, roof, all done in a panelized approach. However, we realized there is value in having some boxes, and these boxes we call modupods. So modupods are our high value boxes. Why are they high value? Well, they're for the size and for the relative space that they take in order to store, they bring much more value to their project, to your project. So what do they have? Well, they have the stairs built into them. And most importantly, they act as the vertical rough-in for all your plumbing, electrical, and HVAC. So within these modupods, you have all of your vertical stacks ready for your final on-site rough-in, your mechanical and electrical. And I'll show you this in a little more detail here.
That is a really cool idea, Rob. Who came up with the modupod idea?
Well, I would say I came up with the branding, but that's as far as I can go. No, this is something Chris has been working on, I think, for the most part of his career. Yeah, I mean, you know, I say half jokingly, I mean, I think branding, to your point, is quite important. And so when I talk about the branding of the modupod, I do quite enjoy that part of it, but Chris is the technical expert. So
Right.
here's roughly the 210 units laid out on the Bradford piece of land. And I'm just going to really walk you through what we have here. So on the left side of your screen is the front of the middle
Rob, we have
building.
4 minutes left.
Yeah, I have a few more slides. I should be
No,
okay.
That's good. I'm enjoying it.
Okay.
But I just want to give you the heads up, make sure you know.
Perfect. Thank you. So on the left-hand side, we have a 2-bedroom, and that is at the front of the building. In the back, we have a studio and 1-bedroom in the back. So we have 3 units per floor, 3-story building with an additional basement unit, 2-bedroom. Now, what you'll see in the green are our 2 modupods. So these actually come as boxes, and you'll note the thickness of the walls. So the thickness of the walls on the modupod, I think, I'm not sure if my cursor is,
Yep.
okay. So that allows for our vertical rough-ins. So we're talking, any venting, piping, electrical runs, etc. And so those are done in the factory. So when these boxes are brought on site and stacked, you now have your vertical rough-in complete. You'll also notice as a design feature, kitchens, bathrooms, all work off of the modupods. So your final rough-in for those elements is almost, a matter of days and not months, right? So you're connecting into your modupods, and all of your all of those wet areas are coming off of the modupods. So I'll just really quickly show you a little bit of the technical side. You'll see on the right-hand side, you've got 6 by 12 panels. Those are your floor panels. You've got your beams that they're sitting on, and the reason I show this is because I think what's important, and this is another Chris feature who likes to talk about intergenerational flexibility. What you see here dropping down is the back unit, the back 2 units, but you see it's an open space, and the importance there is that all of the floor / ceiling panels rest on structural beams. Now, those beams can be exposed beams if we use CLT, or they can be, obviously covered beams. But what you have is an open canvas. So in our Oasis designs, you can play with that floor plan. You can also, down the road, adjust that. So for example, if you say, well, the marketplace right now is showing that, a 2-bedroom is renting for more than my combined studio and 1-bedroom. So now you don't have to worry about load-bearing walls, and you've got an open canvas to design with. So that is really the Bradford project. I think the last thing that I wanted to leave with, or one of the last things, is that we offer an end-to-end process, basically help you from your, highest and best use assessment right to, your finished product. But we also offer what we call a sealed building option. So if you want to be the GC, if you want to do the finishes, for example, what we would deliver is effectively a fully framed and wrapped building. You have your stairs. All of your plumbing, electrical, and HVAC roughed in is complete and ready for inspection. So you're ready to go to insulation, drywall, et cetera, and your windows, doors, and a finished roof. So basically a sealed envelope that you could then take on, the balance of the project. And what we offer as a special, to our clients would be access to our certified material suppliers. So if you then are going to take on the GC role and you want access to our pricing for, drywall, for example, we would do that for our clients. So that's it. The value proposition: price certainty, reduced build time, build quality, environmental sustainability. I mean, the presentation will be available. You can read these in more depth, but that's it. And thank you. And
that was great. I was chiding everybody on the chat box, Rob. Nobody asked what the cost per square foot of this thing is. So on the Bradford project, I know you don't know the actual number, but is it going to be the $200 square foot or $250 a square foot that we're all hoping for? Is it going to be 300 or more? I mean, do you have an idea?
Yeah, our target is 200, and I think Aaron thinks we can do it for less. We'll see. you know, a lot of, if you look at the designs, I think one of the things that's you know, part implicit in what we're doing is we're really targeting people that are building rentals. And you know, I like to work with condo grade. Like, I think people like to see certain things in their rental units, even though, you know, we want to be as efficient as possible, or, you know, build it as cheaply as possible, or as reduce the cost. But I do think, you know, we're looking at $200. We still want to have, you know, hopefully have, you know, the granite countertop, you know, the various elements that bring it to condo grade, so that we, you know, we're in the right rental market. But at the same time, it's the design is such that it's very efficient in its layout. That's going to help on the cost side, and yet still very functional as a rental unit. So, you know, if we were building a single home, which we don't want to build, you know, we might not be able to hit those price points because people will want changes to those designs, such that those are the, you know, that's what they want in their own home. But we're building for the rental market, and we think that by virtue of the design plus, you know, the efficiency in the build process, that we should be able to hit the $200 mark. But yeah, that is what we are.
That's great. And just to put it into perspective for everybody, $200 a square foot is a really magic number. Let's say you have an 800 square foot apartment, and the hard costs are $200 a square foot. So that doesn't include the land cost and the planning costs. And if you have to do a site plan, doesn't include that. Just the hard costs are $200. So figure that out. $200 a square foot times an 800 square foot apartment means you built that apartment for $160,000. As many of you know, because you've heard me talk about it before, if you look at those 30-story steel and concrete towers that many big developers are building, they're now costing, mind you, including land and soft costs and planning costs and all the rest of it, they're now costing $650 a square foot. So for that same apartment, 650 times 800 is $520,000 an apartment. So I'd rather spend $160,000 plus land costs, et cetera, than $520,000. So if we can actually do this, if you can do it at the quality level that you're talking about, Rob, that is a huge step forward. And if you can do it faster, that's another step forward. Now everybody can see on the screen here, there's Rob's contact information, Rob Mariani, 613-277-3232, R Mariani at modulink.ca. So I want to say on behalf of everybody on the call today, Rob, that was really great. I learned a bunch of new stuff. And like I said to everybody on the call, if you can bring your hard costs in at $200 a square foot, maybe less, even if it was $220, it would still be a tremendous deal and a great effort. Next week, I'll do part 2 of Dr. Olander's project, which will only take about 15 minutes. And then I'm also going to talk a little bit about how you prepare for a successful appraisal. Everybody knows that part of what we do as development managers, as owners, is we hopefully finish a project and then we get it appraised and we get it refinanced, and hopefully that works out well. I'll show you some things that have been working well for me and my clients next week. We're going to hear from David Warren. I think you said, Aaron, next week?
Yes.
He's a mortgage broker. He owns his own fund. And, you know, if you can't finance your projects, either to build them or to refinance them, obviously they're not going to go ahead. So we'll hear from David next week. We'll also, of course, hear from Aaron as well. So tune in next Thursday at noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific time. And again, to you, Rob and Aaron and everybody on the call, thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Paul. Bye, Alex. Bye, EJ.